Good morning, board, staff, and members of the public. After my statement, the chairman will open this meeting and explain the rules for this electronic meeting. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. The technical support team may proactively mute participants if the microphone is picking up background noise. Board members should check to make sure their microphone is not muted before speaking. You may text me at 540-336-3948 at any time during the meeting if you need technical support, and an IT tech will call your cell phone to assist. I now turn the meeting over to Chairman Marty Sultan.
In accordance with the governor's state of emergency declaration and executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors Continuity Ordinance and General Assembly 2020 Budget Amendments 28 and 137, Loudoun Water will meet today in an electronic meeting. In compliance with these special procedures, only action items necessary to continue operations of Loudoun Water and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities will be discussed during today's meeting. Reports and other meeting information are available on board docs. Public notice and meeting access information was provided on the Loudoun Water website. A recording of the meeting will be available at this link, www.loudonwater.org/virtual-meeting-recordings. Board members wishing to speak are reminded to press unmute and identify themselves by name so that staff can accurately capture comments. All items will be recommended to the February 11th, 2021 board meeting. The board secretary will now take a roll call attendance of the committee meetings. Members.
Thank you. Mr. Sultan?
Here.
Mr. Bonfils?
Here.
Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Sursakar?
Here.
Thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge that Mr. Koblis and Mr. Kelly are also in attendance.
That's it?
That's it. And we can move on to approving the agenda, sir.
Can we get a roll call or a motion? I move to approve the meeting agenda.
This is Jim Bonfils. The motion to approve the agenda.
I second.
All right. All right. And roll call vote. Mr. Sultan?
Yeah, aye.
Mr. Bonfils?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Ms. Sursakar?
Aye.
All right. Unanimous. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's move to the first action item, award of construction contract for Howardsville.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So good morning. Happy New Year to everybody. I'm here today requesting approval of the construction contract for the Howardsville sewage collection system to be awarded to the Sayers Construction Company. So just to orient you, this map shows Howardsville in relationship to some of the other towns within our county and, of course, our main campus. Howardsville is located in the western part of the county, not too far from Bluemont on Green Garden Road. So just a little background on Howardsville. It is a historic community tracing back to some of the first freed slaves in Loudoun County. The community consists of 15 lots, 9 of which have standing structures. The soils throughout the community are variable and generally unsuitable for individual septic systems. So this has resulted in some of the lots being unbuildable and some of the residents living without proper sewage collection and disposal. So this project is being undertaken via partnership with Loudoun County. The project does predate the Loudoun County Community Water and Wastewater Assistance Program, but it is fully funded by the county. This project has been in the works for a long time, so everybody is really thrilled that we're moving on to the construction phase. So the full wastewater solution for Howardsville is going to be constructed in 2 phases. The first phase, which we are discussing today, is the collection system. The collection system will terminate in a pump and haul that Loudoun Water will own and operate. The second phase will consist of the design and construction of a treatment plant and the drain fields. Once the pump and haul is operational, Loudoun Water will collect data on the flows and loads for a year in order to determine the best approach to treatment. This phased approach was selected in order to move more quickly address the public health concerns and also allow Loudoun Water to be able to right size the treatment plant and select the appropriate technology. So the contractor, as part of this project, will install small diameter, low pressure collection system, pump and haul tank, 8 grinders, and an access road. So the general alignment of the force main is shown here in red. There are 2 legs, and they both terminate in this green box right here, which is the pump and haul tank, and also the location of the future treatment plant. The access road runs along the same alignment here as this leg of the force main, and the grinders will be installed on the lots that are shown in the teal color. The homes, the remaining lots will be able to connect to the system in the future if homes are built on those lots. Are there any questions before I move on? Okay, so the bids for this project were opened on December 21st, and there were 3 bids. The lowest responsive and responsible bidder was the Sagres Construction Company with a bid of $947,000. As you can see, this estimate is significantly below the engineer's estimate for a number of reasons, which were determined through discussion with Sagres. In particular, the limits of disturbance that Dewberry assumed during their estimate versus what Sagres used for their bid are significantly different. Also, Dewberry assumed that the winning contractor may use multiple subs to be able to complete the work, whereas Sagres has informed staff that they will be self-performing the majority of the work, so that further reduces the cost. Ultimately, despite the difference in the bid and the engineer's estimate, staff is comfortable that Sagres fully understands the project and is capable of doing the work. Any questions?
Mr. Kobles has a
Hi,
question.
Savita.
Hi.
Yes, this is Angeline. Hi, Savita.
Hi.
I had a question. With Sagres, have they done a project like this in the past?
Yeah, so as part of our bid process, we do require that the contractor give us references for similar projects, and they have done pipeline installation. They've done quite a bit of it around the DC metro area. There are not a lot of projects that are done like this in particular, but they are familiar with pipeline installation. And we did receive references and feedback from other utilities that have used them.
And I also just want to capture, in the beginning of the presentation, you said that, it's been a long time coming for this project. What were some of the constraints in the past? I mean, they didn't have proper sewage, for some time now. So I was sitting here wondering, what was taking so long to provide this service to them?
So this project actually predates me by quite a number of years, but my understanding is the biggest challenge was finding an easement in order to be able to place a treatment plant and develop the drain fields. So that was the property to the north is owned by a gentleman named Mr. Gable, and he and the county have developed an easement that was then transferred to us in 2019. And then we've been able to do this design and now get to the construction phase.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Savita. That helps
Sure.
a lot.
Yep.
Thanks.
Mr. Kobles and then Mr. Moody have questions, Savita?
So, even though the price is a great price, Dewberry really blew this thing. And, I mean, we as Loudoun Water got our hands slapped significantly by the county because of their estimate. And now all of a sudden, everything is exactly what we thought the price was going to be in the first place. fact, lower than the price that we thought it was going to be. So, I know I see these few items here, but that doesn't make it 50% wrong. So, this is very disappointing on our engineer's estimate. I just thought it should be pointed out to the rest of the board members about this.
Understood.
Mr. Moody?
Yes. Hi. Good morning, Savita.
Good morning.
The question I have is, does Loudon Water have any track record with Sagres Construction? I know, in terms of doing this type of work, but just any track record at all?
I believe that they have done, they did at least one project for us a few years ago, maybe two.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if Brian's on the phone. He might be able to add some additional information or send you an email later and follow up.
Yeah, I'd be
Yep.
curious about the track record and the performance in the previous contract.
Yeah,
Yes.
the feedback. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
They performed a couple of projects for us, and they've got a good record. They did good work for us.
Okay. Okay, great. And then, and I don't recall if in any other previous meetings, what were some of the key criteria in terms of selection between the vendors that stands out to you?
So this is a low bid.
Mhm.
So really the primary driver is the bid price, and then if
Okay,
they meet
okay.
the other requirements, then this is a typical design bid build project. Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
I've come
lower-
to you with other things, and we're selecting
Yeah,
qualifications, not on this one. This is actually a bid
yeah.
project.
So basically you're saying lowest cost technically acceptable is what you're saying.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
So they
I'm
have
sure
there is criteria that they do have to meet, but yeah, it is lowest cost.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Sultan?
I have two questions. One's a general question and one's a specific question. One question is, has the county specifically approved this amount?
Yes, the county is aware of the bid price, and they, of course, are very happy with it.
Okay, the second one is more general, and I don't know who would answer this question. What has been the effect of COVID on our bids? Do we have any idea?
Brian, I think I'll pass that to you. If
I really, that's a tough question, because I'm hearing about some supply chain problems that are created by COVID. It seems like the labor market is improving a little bit for these bids, so I think that's sort of helping. We've gotten a few claims from our contractors and been notified about several employees in some of the projects that have been diagnosed with COVID, and then they're sent home for a couple of weeks for a quarantine period. But your question is, as much as it's related to the bid price, it's kind of hard to judge. I think there's some good and some bad there between supply chain problems, but maybe improvements in the labor market. So it's really kind of hard to really give you a certain answer on that.
Well, Brian, if I might, we've only had a couple of projects roll out for, with bids received during this time. Well, just a handful, and those have all, from my recollection, been fairly good outcomes from a pricing standpoint. We do hear these concerns expressed by the contractors about supply chain, but yet the ones that jump to my mind that we've received during this time have all been fairly favorable relative to our estimates.
All right, I was just curious what effect we might be getting. All right, thanks.
sure.
Are there
Okay.
any other
Other
questions?
Okay, then I have this motion before you.
Does somebody want to make move the motion?
Yeah, hi, this is Keith. I'd like to move the motion forward.
This is Marty, seconded. Can we get a roll call?
Yes. Are there any other questions before we do the roll call vote? All right,
This
Mr.
is for consent, or is it for action?
I would say this would be for consent.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sultan?
Yes.
Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar?
Yes.
Unanimous and move to consent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to the next item, basic ordering agreements.
Good morning. I'm here this morning to request some authorization to award some basic ordering agreements for some professional engineering services. So I'm going to start off and just talk a little bit in general about basic ordering agreements, and then kind of from there follow into some of the public procurement requirements, talk about Loudon Water Selection Committee, the process that we followed, and end up with some recommendations for you. So just wanted to start off in general, BOA contracts are the primary mechanism that Loudon Water uses to gain access to professional engineers. So the contracts are really comprised of two major parts. The first part being the agreement itself, and that lays out the terms and conditions, right? So things like professional liability insurance requirements, how we get invoiced, how consultants report out on projects, and then the task orders. So this is what really makes these contracts valuable to Loudon Water, is being able to have the terms and conditions negotiated. And when we identify a package of work, we can go to these engineers and we can specifically scope what we need, the work that we need done, and negotiate time and material fee estimates, schedules, and things of that nature. So we bring those forward, and collectively, the task orders and the agreement comprise the BOA contract. We have three different types of BOA contracts for professional engineering services. The first one is the civil BOAs. So Brian was before you last summer, early fall, where asking for authorization to execute contracts with these four firms shown here. We generally use these contracts for more professional engineering services related to kind of the land development arena. So, smaller distribution collection systems projects, land use challenges, things like that. We also have the community systems BOAs. We use those to support any efforts that we need out in our community systems. And so those tend to be smaller projects and having firms that have different skill sets, things like soil scientists on board, which we don't require as much of when we're talking about our central system. And then we have our environmental BOAs. So those contracts we hold currently with four firms, Arcadis, Black & Veatch, Hazen and Sawyer, and HDR. And those contracts expire at the end of February. So the environmental BOA is really significant, I'd say, to Loudon Water. It is the contracting mechanism where we gain access to engineers with very diverse, but also diverse skills, but also really where we're expecting the highest level of technical competency. So, you see in this word cloud things like source water protection. So we're looking for these engineers to be able to meet our needs related to our water resources program, as well as multidisciplinary engineering for water booster pump stations and elevated storage tanks and wastewater pump stations. Have competencies in hydraulic modeling and master planning. So these firms tend to, need to be able to have broad capabilities. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we've used this contract in the past. So with the contracts that we authorized and executed in 2016, since then, we have issued 140 task orders over the four contracts over the 5-year period, totaling just under $14 million in work. So I can stop right there and see if there's any questions before I start talking about the VPPA requirements.
I have one question.
Sure.
You hear me?
Yes.
I'm a big proponent of the BOA. We used it at Fairfax many times. But the number of tasks, these tasks don't all go to the board, or do they?
So they do not. It depends on the level of effort of the work. So if the task order is over $100,000, it comes forward through the CIP committee for the board's authorization to award that.
Oh, okay. Because I noticed that It's a huge number, and I didn't think we had seen anything near that number on the committee.
Yeah, they vary significantly, but anything over $100,000 has come forward.
All right, thank you.
So the selection of these firms is done in compliance with Virginia public procurement law. And that requires that the selection of the firms is based on qualifications and through an RFP, a request for proposal process. So what that means is that we follow the RFP process, we receive proposals, and ultimately we select those firms that we want to work with based on qualifications, and then follow that with competitive negotiation for being able to proceed moving forward. There are some other limitations on the contract, the timeline. So the contract is cannot be let for more than 5 years total. So we enter into a 1-year agreement, and we have the option for annual renewals for 4 additional years. And also limitations on the dollar value of the work that can be performed underneath a single contract. So there is an annual limit of $8 million of work that can be performed by any single contract holder, and a single project limit of $2.5 million. So realizing that we had contracts that were going to expire in February, and what's involved in the RFP process, back in mid-October, we put out an RFP for these services. We followed it up and had a pre-proposal conference with interested firms about a week later, and proposals were submitted to Loudon Water just before Thanksgiving. So from there, the selection committee, which I'm going to talk about in a second, reviewed them and developed a short list of firms that we wanted to interview. We conducted those interviews just a few weeks ago, had lots of good conversation and deliberation, selected the firms that we want to enter into an agreement with, and now we're here in front of you asking for authorization to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about the 2 major components of the procurement, because I think it's really helpful. So within Loudon Water, a selection committee was formed, and it was 7 people across the organization. So we had people within our operations and maintenance division, working within water operations, wastewater operations, asset management, water resources. We also had representation from engineering and procurement on this committee. And we worked together to really identify, what are the criteria through which we want to be able to assess these firms. So you can see in this table here, we were interested in learning about things like the project team qualifications. Who are the people that are being proposed to work with us? What is the firm's experience in working under a BOA contract? Also understanding firms' technical skills, how they manage change in projects themselves, as well as understanding what value do we think they can bring to us as an organization. So with all of that said, we received 18 proposals, which is really a phenomenal response. From there, the selection committee reviewed and ranked those proposals, and we came up with our short list, and then we interviewed 10 firms. So again, this committee got together and we really talked about the format for the interviews and what questions we wanted to ask. So you can see right here, just kind of the schedule, if you will, for the interviews. And we gave firms a period of time to really just tell us, why they thought they were the right firm for the contract. But really, the large majority of the time you can see here was a Q&A session. So Loudon Water gave a lot of thought to really trying to figure out what did we want to ask these firms to be able to assess if they were the best fit for us. And how did we figure out the questions to ask? Well, we thought about what was important to us. And so you see a picture here of our CIP. And we're looking to have our needs met for the next 5 years through the use of this contract. So we dug into our CIP and did an analysis and really looked project by project to understand, hey, is this a project where we might potentially have a need for a BOA, an environmental BOA firm to assist us? And if so, how would we kind of categorize this? Is this in, kind of water infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, water resources. And we wanted to understand that because at the end with our selection, we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. We want to be able to have access to multiple firms who have the skill sets and capabilities to be able to successfully help us. We also, through the interview process, really wanted to tap into some of these, I say, softer skills, right? And to understand from these firms, do they understand our challenges? I think we can all acknowledge that Loudon Water has unique challenges with our growth and things like that. So we wanted to really understand, do these firms understand our challenges, our culture, the way that we think? And do they also bring some other skills that we think are really beneficial to us? The talent that they have within their organizations and things like business acumen. So with all of that, we held 10 interviews and we had an hour interview with each firm, and then we followed it up with an hour discussion on what we heard and kind of pushed and pulled on a lot of these things. And ultimately, the selection committee came to a recommendation. So that's what you're seeing here. So you see on the left here, the firms that we had an environmental BOA contract with since 2016. That's Arcadis, Black & Veatch, Hazen & Sawyer, and HDR. And of those firms, we have reselected 3 of them, Black & Veatch, Hazen & Sawyer, and HDR. And we've also, in addition to that, selected 2 additional firms, both Carollo and CDM Smith. So the recommendation here is that we award environmental BOA contracts to these 5 firms that you see here. Mr. Sultan.
I know I've been out of the business for a while, but could you tell me something about Carollo? I haven't heard of them before.
So Carollo is primarily, they just work within the water sector. So they are smaller, I would say, than a company that you would see like a Black & Veatch, which is thousands of people. So they're originally, I think, started on the West Coast and have been moving towards the east. So their presence in this area is, less than I think we would say from some of these other firms, but we were very impressed with their capabilities and the people that have been joined them within this area are some of them we are familiar with their skills. So, but they're, I would say, on the smaller end, just a guess in the kind of 1,000 maybe number of professionals.
Okay, thanks. I just had not seen that before. Okay.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Kobulos?
There we go. So one of my issues has been for the past 4 or 5 years is that one firm is getting most of the work, and I know having BOAs before, there's nothing worse than getting onto a BOA and one firm getting all the work. And so the one, H&S got over 70% of all the money in the last 5 years. B&V and Arcadis and HDR, I think one of them got less than 10% and the other one's got a little more than 10%. And now we have 2 of those people back on the list again. So I'm just curious how we're going to rectify, or maybe rectify is the wrong word. How are we going to make sure that the wealth is spread around to all these firms so that they didn't just kind of waste their time for the past 3 months going through this selection process?
I think you make a good point, which is that when selecting these firms, that we also want to make sure that we work with them. So, I think that we've made more of a conscious effort more recently. We did go back and look at, for example, the past year, and firms like Black & Veatch and HDR, we did award more to in the past year. But I think it's really understanding the capabilities of the firm and making sure that within our own division, with our own organization, we know what those skills are, and we really look at it more holistically when selecting upfront the firms. You know, I think in the past we have maybe gone more so to Hazen and Sawyer because we have a long-standing history there. And to that point, you know, the institutional knowledge has been there, but we, in order to really be able to tap into the benefits that all of these firms can bring, we have to realize that there's going to be a learning curve that's with that. And I just think we have to make a commitment to that.
Well, I mean, I know as from our firm, you know, it's, you know, just because somebody's worked with somebody for a long time doesn't mean somebody else can't step up and do the same job. Can you go through the 5 firms? I mean, are Black and Veatch and CDM Smith and Hazen and Sawyer and HDR all equal firms and can do equal things, or is one better for water, one better for sewer? You've already explained Carollo, so that's probably don't need to go into detail them. I assume they're going to be doing small water projects. But can you tell me about the other 4 firms? Are they equals?
So I think that when we selected the firms, we made sure that when we looked at the types of projects that we had, that they covered it. So I don't think that they all necessarily have the same strengths. Carollo, for example, you know, that's a, you know, actually looked it up. They're like 100 years old and have like 1,100 staff. But we think that their skill set is really in some of this more like multi-objective modeling and decision making. So things where we're looking at how to best integrate our water resources, they might be better positioned for that type of stuff rather than hard design work. You look at firms like CDM Smith, and they designed the Trap Rock water treatment plant. But outside of that, you know, they actually have a pretty large design staff of design engineers in this area. So well over 100 engineers within within their Fairfax office. So in some cases, we're looking at that being a strength, right, for more infrastructure projects. You know, Black and Veatch, we've really tapped into more recently regarding their ability to serve as a professional advisor on the quarry, as well as they've been helping us with more recently with understanding what improvements we need to make to comply with forthcoming ammonia standards at all of our community systems. You know, so, you know, HDR has been really instrumental and is currently supporting us on pump station design work, but also on understanding the potential pathways for potable reuse and what does that mean. So I don't, you know, I think that as far as you look at overall competency, I think we feel like this group of consultants can meet our needs, but I wouldn't say that they necessarily all have the same strength.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, good morning. This is Angeline. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I was just listening to Mark. Just a few things that I picked up here. I think what he was not concerned about, but he voiced his, you know, yeah, well, it was more of a concern. Regarding loyalty of organization, I think that's what, Mark, you were talking about, right? So a better distribution of wealth, giving other consulting firms an opportunity to be on a project like this. With that being said, I just picked up with CDM Smith. You said they had more engineers and were better capable of doing this kind of work. Is that what I'm gathering?
I think the point that I was making is that they have a significant local design team, and that depending upon the project, we could view that as a strength, that they have that capability, right? So when I'm saying that they have not just they have process mechanical designers, electrical designers, HVAC designers, all of those things are located locally in Fairfax, whereas that may not necessarily be as strong of a case for some of the other firms. But I don't think that it's just a consideration that we make when we're looking for the best fit, right, as far as what firm to perform work for us.
No, I do understand, and I understand that you have that best interest of land and water when you make that consideration. I think what Mark had just expressed, I think there is a hidden sort of concern over there that we should, and I'm going to keep an eye out for this, and I'm being very transparent about it. Loyalty to an organization it's not a good way to go. We should be loyal to Land and Water. We should be loyal to the projects and meet the goal instead of being loyal to organizations. So if I see that up and coming, I will voice my concern on that and take a press on that. Thank you.
Sarah, if there's a moment, is it okay if I just kind of speak up? Let me get my camera on. So thank you to the board members for expressing your thoughts on this, and I think what we've seen over the years is these projects that we have, many of these projects are very long projects, and sometimes a project like the big the Horsepen Sewer project, for example, that is kind of getting close to wrapping up construction. That project probably started 7 or so years ago, or 8 years ago. So sometimes these projects kind of live on longer than even the terms of some of these BOA contracts. And I think over the years, with sort of the imbalance of work that we saw heading to Hazen and Sawyer, some of that was the result of years ago, we didn't necessarily have as strong a pool of engineering firms. Sometimes we pick these firms and then we start working with them and we learn about their strengths and weaknesses, through experience with them, and as we live with them. And sometimes we find out that maybe their strengths aren't exactly what we thought. And I think that happened some time ago, and it ended up having a lot of projects kind of steered towards Hazen again, because they were a firm that's worked with us for a long time, and there's been a lot of investment in them and them in us, and so we work together fairly well. And I think those projects, many of those projects have persisted over time, and in the best interest of Loudon Water to continue in the different stages of those projects, often to continue with the same firm is the most cost-effective, most efficient way for us to keep working. And I think if you look back, to the comments that we had about the distribution of costs over the last 5 years, while I don't discount the fact that there was a lot of imbalance towards Hazen and Sawyer, I think if you look over the last 3 years or so, that we have made, a good effort to try to balance those out, to the point that even last year, Hazen and Sawyer did not receive the highest task order, value. So I appreciate that, and you guys have expressed this concern to us before. We've heard it, we've seen it, and I think, I just want you guys to know that we're always looking at what the best interest in the projects are and in Loudon Water. We don't have allegiance to any particular firm. Sometimes the data might look a little bit different than that, but that really isn't how we try to award projects, nor select the firms, quite honestly. So I just wanted to leave you with that, but thank you for your input.
This is Angeline again. Hi. Mark has been there for a very long time, so I lean on him for a lot of different, reasons and concerns. So I just want to understand that this was brought up today. This fact about under the umbrella of organizational loyalty, and we're kind of discussing this. And if we don't have an allegiance towards a firm, why are we even discussing this? I mean, can somebody answer that for me?
Let me try to jump in here. Not sure I'll help the situation, but I think what we're trying to describe is that we have more recently developed probably a tighter process where we're really looking to spread the wealth of the work. But one of the things that you will see is if we have a new firm and we've never worked with them before, and you give them work, if you're not completely satisfied, or if there's time delays or time issues, the next time a task order comes up, you're probably going to want to go to someone else. And so it's, for me, Hazen and Sawyer is and I'm not an engineer, but Hazen and Sawyer is sort of that expert in, wastewater. It's this big firm that has all of these national connections. And so again, I think I've heard what Mark said, and Mark lets me know that his concerns, and I feel confident that our engineering staff is really trying to do that. Some of the bigger projects may go to the bigger firms. I think that's just the nature of the beast. When you have deadlines or timelines, you don't have the luxury of sort of dealing with the learning curve. We have to think about that too. So I think to reiterate what Tom said, we hear what Mark is saying. We know his concerns. We don't award based on there are going to be experts at some of these firms too that you really want on a project. So I don't know if that's loyalty to the project or more loyalty to Loudon Water to ensure that we get the best quality. So just want to reassure you that I feel confident that the concerns have been heard, that they will continue to be addressed. And just as a quick aside, several years ago, we actually had our financial auditors come in and audit this whole BOA process because of some of these concerns about how BOAs were, or how task orders were awarded. And there was, I think there was some lessons learned out of that effort, which has made sure that as we go forward, we're looking at all the firms, we're selecting the best firm to do the best work for Loudon Water, while also trying to bring others into the fold so that we have choices. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's something that we're always looking at, trying to improve, and I feel confident that we'll do that with these BOAs as well.
Thanks,
Hi,
Carla.
This is
Yeah, just
I'm
one
sorry,
more
go ahead.
thing, before I finish off here, please. So as I was listening and gathering information that, with Hazen, we've had, we worked with them, they've invested in us, we've invested in them, there were, we learned about their strengths and weaknesses and vis-a-vis. My concern is, this comes up again and again that, sort of we're constrained with the supply chain management because of COVID. The projects that we approve here, I just want to make sure that we really don't really have the patience anymore to just look the strength and the weaknesses like we did in the past, because we have these pre-existing constraints. One of them, as I said right now, is supply and chain concern, and the other is the people that we assign these work to, unfortunately, they're struck by COVID, and that's understandable. So, but these are constraints towards the project, and we have to keep a note of that. And that being said, what I would like to learn is, if there are any lessons learned, and if we are, offering our approval for projects for these, firms that we worked in the past, it would be wonderful to know what their strengths and weaknesses are. We're not going to disapprove them, but it's really good to know what the lessons learned are, what are the strengths and weaknesses, because sitting on the board here, we make decisions about these projects, and I think we should know about that.
Okay.
So,
I think as we bring the task orders forward, I think, a few indications of why that particular firm was selected, or that's reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just great to know the strengths and weaknesses, for our own contextual background.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you.
Yes. Hi, good morning, Carla. It's Keith. I
Hi.
just want to ask a question following up on some of the conversation. With the BOA awardees, do you at all see them coming together on the individual task orders and any type of teaming arrangements to combine capabilities? Is that something that's either precluded in the BOA, or is that something you just have not seen? Just curious.
I'll probably have to defer to Tom on that. I'm not sure that you can sort of mix and match. I think you can take your project and break it down into different elements. And certainly if you felt that one firm was stronger in the modeling piece of it and one firm was stronger in the, something else, you could do that. I think you would measure the risk of, separating that work instead of keeping it collective and sort of a comprehensive.
I was just curious in terms of the contractors responding on their end. Are you seeing them not going out in the solicitation process, but are they on their end deciding, hey, let's team on this, and it was one being a subcontractor to the other to join capabilities to respond to a task order? Are you seeing that occur at all?
Tom, do you see that, or is that that may not be allowed? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Well,
we do.
Sarah,
go ahead, Sarah, if you want to take a crack at it.
Yeah, we do see. So generally speaking, you know, the firms that we presented here, you know, it's the strength is in the water and wastewater infrastructure. So, I mean, they do propose with sub-consultants, and generally speaking, those sub-consultants, those supplement with skill sets that they don't actually have internally. So, for example, if it's, you know, surveying sub-consultants or firms that specialize in easement negotiations or things like that. But generally speaking, we don't see, you know, teaming of, say, two of these firms. When
Yeah,
we
that's what I
have,
was referring to, the board awardees, yeah.
yeah, we generally don't see that, but we have in the past, though, when it's in our best interest and we think we want to uh, pull, if you will, experts. We have something in particular where we want to get a panel and convene a panel of experts, for example. We may go to each of these firms and draft a task order that gets us access to a particular expert, and then in the execution of the work, we bring that team together. And so we do then, in that sense, get a mixing, and we get the benefit from having these different people from different firms with different experiences, but contractually, they're all individually held contracts that they have with us, Loud and Water.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Do you want to add, Tom?
The only thing I could add to that is while the answer to Mr. Moody's question is not into the BOAs, if we put a RFP out for a specific project, like maybe something like the design of when we did the design of the trap rock treatment plant, or for an expansion at Broad Run, in those instances, you may see, you know, consultants team together on a project that's more specific of that nature, but we don't see it under these sort of general open contracts that we call BOAs. So
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Would it be too troublesome to, let's say, every quarter present to the board a summary of the task orders that have been given, especially the ones under 100,000 that the board doesn't normally see?
we do I'm sorry, we do currently provide a quarterly report to the board on the status of the task orders, so we could take a look at that and see if there was any additional information that you would like on that.
That summary is for tasks above 100,000 only, or is it include?
No, it covers in totality the tasks that are issued.
All right,
for the quarter.
Mr. Kobelis, do you have a question?
Yes, thanks. I just want to get a couple things straight in my mind. So I'm assuming that these firms can pretty much do just about anything. I'm sure that one is a better planner or whatever, but most of these big firms have the capabilities of doing the same project. So my question is, let's say there's a plain vanilla pumping station, sewage, sanitary sewer pumping station that we need to put out there that's of a significant size. How do you decide which one of these firms that you're going to talk to about that project? Because I know we don't bid them out, so it's not so, but it's up to somebody in the firm. I don't know if it's you, Sarah, or you, Tom, decides on which one of these firms is going to do the project. Can you explain that to me, please?
Sarah, do you want to just share an example of something like maybe the project that you guys went through for the ammonia removal study for the treatment plants?
Yeah.
No, I'd like to talk about just a plain sanitary, just a just a pumping station. How do you
Okay.
decide who does that job? Nothing specialized, just a pumping station out there. How would you decide who's going to get that project?
So we've had several pump station projects. There's rehab projects and new pump station projects. And I think we look at a lot of different factors. So for example, if this is located, in an area, or there's a particular firm that has experience with maybe um, a certain style, configuration, or they've worked in the pump station before, and we feel like there may be efficiencies gained by them having a base knowledge. We'll look at how much work does the firm already have with us, or is it tapping similar resources? If you have, for example, other efforts that are related to water resources planning and hydraulic modeling, distribution system modeling, then theoretically a lot of the designers and the design staff that will be tapping into a pump station project, you're not actually then adding work that is actually going to work against you in constraining and potentially impacting the delivery of other efforts that we have. I think we look at a lot of different things, the speed of delivery and other project constraints, things like that, in how quickly we think those firms can deliver for us and the certainty of the delivery. I don't know, Tom, if you want to add to that.
No, I think you've covered most of those things, and I think also in there is their performance, on past projects, or again, as Carla was mentioning, sometimes you may have a schedule constraint on something, and if you have a firm that you really haven't worked with in that particular area before, then it's a consideration to determine whether or not the learning curve might impede our ability to meet a schedule. So all those things I think go into the overall selection. So I'm not sure if that helps answer your question, Mark, what you were looking for.
Well, I mean, I obviously you picked 3 of those firms to come back, so you're very satisfied with their performance and that they can meet any schedule. And obviously I'm also very familiar with CDM Smith, so I'm sure they can meet those same qualifications. But I would kind of, do you just like pick, who's the next guy in the block? I mean, I just can't believe there's that much difference between those 4 firms. I don't know Carollo, so that doesn't, I don't know those guys, but the rest of the 4 guys, any one of them can do that project.
So I think when Sarah mentioned kind of, looking at the resources and if they have the capability to continue to support us, that might be another way of just saying, yeah, who's the next guy on the block? Like, we don't want to overload one particular firm up with too much of the same style of work, because we know it's going to constrain their abilities to basically deliver on those. So trying to get each firm with a diverse style of projects, again, that as long as those projects match up with their skill sets, then sometimes that might be the case, is just picking somebody. The only reason I was going to mention, and I brought up the one about the ammonia removal, just because in that instance, and it was a little bit different, we actually interviewed the firms, kind of mini interviewed the firms that we had under the BOA, because we didn't know which ones might be able to support us on something like that. So sometimes it is a discussion with a couple of the firms to talk about, do you have the capabilities, if we were to bring you in for a task order, to currently support us on this, either technically or resource wise? And we gather a little bit of that kind of data from them, and then we use that in determining which one we want to start discussing the task order with. And there may have been times, I don't think we run into this too often, but there's certainly, I can think of a few times in the past where we sat down with the firm and we started scoping on something, and we just couldn't get ultimately either them to get us sort of the right approach from a cost standpoint or from a schedule standpoint. And in some cases, maybe we did break off those discussions and then go start to talk to one of a different firm to pick that project up. It doesn't happen often, but I won't say that's never happened either.
Well, that's really good to hear. I think we should do that more and more on these projects, that you talk to a few firms to see, like you say, what's their capabilities, what's their schedule, and how would they approach this project, rather than just giving the project to a firm. Anyway, we beat this to death. Let me get off.
I have one question. not professional, but physical, is there a big difference in these firms as far as the actual number of staff that they have locally?
Yeah, there is a difference, I would say, across the firms, from hundreds to less than 100 to, I would say, local with, kind of less than 50. And they, I think that their business configuration, how they gain access to other resources, say, for example, nationally or in the Mid-Atlantic region, might vary.
But nothing to be concerned about.
Not from our perspective.
Okay, I don't know if there's any other questions on this particular issue. All right, well, why don't you move ahead?
Okay. So there's a recommended motion here for you to consider.
I just have a quick question. Hang on. Just one. This is Angeline.
Sure,
With
go.
Corolla, is this the first time we're working with that? I just, before I pose that question, I wanted to make sure that I was understanding this. So the Corolla, yeah, is this
We
our
have
first
not.
time?
We have not held a contract with Corolla Engineers. I think it's important to note, though, that several people within that firm we have worked with in the past. I mean, what you see in the water wastewater industry is that naturally some of the staff move around. So they're not completely unknown to us in that regard.
Okay, but you've worked with people in their firm in the past, but this is the first time that we're actually, offering them a project. Correct?
This is the first time that we are entering into a BOA contract with them. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Are there no other questions? I'm suggesting that we move this motion to the action item on the board, since there might be other board members that have questions about this process. Do I have a motion?
This is Keith. I motion to move forward.
Do I have a second?
This is Angeline. I'll second that.
Okay, Jewel, can we have a vote?
Yes, sir. If there are no other questions, the vote. Mr. Sultan?
Yes?
Mr. Bonfils? Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar?
Yes.
Unanimous, and move to the action item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing is capital construction report.
Good morning. Make sure we'll get it loaded here, and then I'll get control of it. Oh, I already see a mistake. It's fourth quarter of 2020. So my mistake on that. But I'm here. Good morning to you. And I think I've got control now, so I'll start the presentation. Okay, this is the agenda I have for this presentation. I've got the 2 pump station projects at the top, the Brambleton and Cedar Crest. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Goose Creek Crossing and then the Broad Run expansion to 15 million gallons per day. And then I'll close with some of the performance numbers. Just a quick note about Brambleton and the Cedar Crest pump stations. To perform that work, we're having to, the contractors actually installed a bypass pumping system. They've implemented that to maintain the service at those stations. So those stations are on a complete bypass operation now. while the contractor completes the work to allow the station to be brought back online. So that's 3 stations total that we have on a bypass operation. So I'm hopeful that we can end all of these within the coming weeks here. This is a shot from a couple photographs from the Brambleton pump station project. We are in the commissioning and startup phase. We've already done a lot of the pump testing, but this is the bypass operation I just mentioned, is shown on the left. That's pumping out of a manhole and into the interim pump station that we already had there at the site to allow us to continue that operation while they install the gravity sewer between the gravity sewer that feeds the new pump station. And that's a new manhole that you see on the right that has been set. And I'll stop here for a second. I don't want to go too fast. If there are any questions, please stop me. Okay, a little bit about the Cedar Crest pump station upgrades. We're upgrading both the Cedar Crest pump stations, and they are in the very southern tip of our central system, right at the border with Fairfax County, in fact. We're doing, it's primarily about equipment upgrades, pumps, grinders, and flow meters. We are upgrading the SCADA as well. We're doing a little bit of some piping improvements there, and then also some security and HVAC upgrades at those 2 stations. And that just gives you an idea. Those stations are about 16 or 17 miles south of us. So that's a long time to get from those stations all the way up to Broad Run. But those stations pump into the central system that flows into the Broad Run interceptor, which flows into the Broad Run water reclamation facility. These are 2 photographs. The first one on the left is the Cedar Crest, just a photograph of the pumps. Of course, these pumps are 3-phase service, not single-phase service like you'd have in your home. So you have a lot of conductors. You have a conductor for each phase, plus a neutral, and in some cases you have a ground as well. So the wiring and the electrical service is quite extensive for this type of work. And then the photograph on the right is a valve vault we're installing at Cedar Crest 2, the other pump station, which is a little bit smaller pump station. Just a little bit on the size of these pumps. The pump on the left is a 35 horsepower pump, and it's modeled to pump right at 350 gallons per minute. And then the other Cedar Crest station has much smaller pumps. They're 11 horsepower pumps and a much lower flow rate of around 100 gallons per minute. The Goose Creek Crossing, we presented this to the board for approval back in the early fall, September, October timeframe. We issued the notice to proceed in November. The contract time to final completion is 420 days. The project should be substantially complete by the end of next year. So we have a substantial completion milestone before we get to final completion, but we should be at final completion in early 2022. And this is a slide largely from, at least these captions here are from the presentation we did presented to you back in September. Also from September, we talked about this work as being marine construction and the subaqueous pipe installation methods. That would be the options that were available to the contractor. So that's a caption for the slide from the September CIP meeting. And then on the right, I included the contractor's actual shop drawing submittal for the pipe ballast. So our contractor for this project is Garney Construction. And so the caption on the right is the pipe ballast, and that's our shop drawing submittal from the project. Any questions? Okay, I've got this is from our GIS system showing the Broad Run interceptor and the Potomac interceptor, which you see there. That's the 54-inch pipe that's in gray, and that pipe goes all the way to DC Water. It goes to the Blue Plains wastewater treatment plant in DC, and that was constructed starting in the early 60s that allowed the Dulles Airport to drain all the way to DC. And then it enabled us. It started Loudon Water as well, because we used that pipe exclusively for years before the Broad Run plant was constructed. The pipe at the top is the 54-inch Russell Branch interceptor, and then the piping in red is the piping that we will be installing. It's being constructed now to tie into the Russell Branch interceptor. This gives us a lot of options to drain the plant. We can drain to the Russell Branch interceptor from Broad Run. We can actually pump to it from Broad Run if we need to under certain circumstances. We can pump either directly from the influent pump station, or we can drain our new 10 million gallon equalization tank directly to the Russell Branch interceptor. And that piping is being installed now. And that piping, if you can see at the very top, the new doghouse manhole that is has already been set on the Russell Branch interceptor. And I'll show you what that looks like. That's on the photo on the left is the doghouse manhole that sits right over top of the Russell Branch interceptor. The photograph on the right is the Russell Branch interceptor has already been excavated around, and then the contractors actually placed some reinforcing steel to pour a new slab around that to set this structure. And then this is the doghouse manhole as it has been placed on the Russell Branch interceptor. And sometime in the future, that pipe will be taken out, and then we'll allow the connection to our new pipe force main from the Broad Run treatment plant to this doghouse manhole. So it really gives us a lot of options. Any questions so far?
Hey, Brian, can you go back to that other, to the actual site plan?
Yes.
Just a quick question for me. The 72-inch Brippy, that's our pipe that we put in, correct? And that feeds our sewage treatment plant.
That's right.
54-inch Russell Branch interceptor, is that feeding into our treatment plant also?
It can. At the present time, it is not. We have the ability to divert flow from the Russell Branch interceptor into Broad Run, but at the present time, we're only taking flow from the Broad Run interceptor into the Broad Run treatment facility.
Okay, so
just to clarify, Brian, right now that actually is partially open. We're bringing some flow from Russell Branch. We have a control valve in place that we can direct as much or as little flow from that line into the plant. And it currently is in a partially open mode. So we're bringing some flow in from Russell Branch and all of the flow from Brippy being treated at Broad Run.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way we can manage our capacity at Blue Plains. We have pretty good flexibility and gives us some options.
Any other questions, Mr. Koblis?
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay. I've got one last slide here for the Broad Run expansion. The photograph on the left is a 24-inch force main, and that is being constructed to tie into that doghouse manhole from the reclamation facility. And then the photograph on the right is just some electrical conduit and some other work contractors performing at the site. So I'm going to pause here for just a minute. I do have a question for Mr. Sultan. I believe that by this summer we may have enough activity. We should have enough activity that I could increase the reporting for this project if you want me to. I was thinking perhaps every other month, or we could leave it quarterly if you just prefer that. Or I could look at things on a case-by-case basis and just report major milestones as they're completed, or some interesting elements of the work as those are completed as well. So Mr. Sultan, I just wanted you to think about that. I don't want an answer today, but perhaps in the next couple of months, maybe we could catch up and talk a little bit about that. And I just want to meet the, if you have some extra interest in this project, I can certainly report a little more on it, but I just wanted your feedback on that.
All right. We will talk about it.
Okay. Okay, and then the last slide here, just a little bit about the status of these projects, and then the amount of the change orders. We're in very good shape on change orders on all of them. I'm real pleased with that. We are exceeding our contract time on several of these, and those are for various reasons. Some are excusable and some are not excusable. And so for some of these projects, we're having some pretty difficult conversations with the contractors.
I have a question. First of all, I think what you guys do is a change order percentage is outstanding.
Thank you.
0.5% is unheard of. But I'd have two questions about the previous column. You have 89% of the contingency used on the one project and the other one down. Both are building projects. Why are there so much problem with you would think a building project would be relatively simple.
We recognized some changes that for the O&M building renovation, we recognized some changes that we needed to make in the design that resulted in additional work. And so that drove that percentage up some. For the HVAC controls, we had to do a little extra work on some of those as well. And it wasn't so much pertaining to the design, but some nuances out in the field that needed to be changed. And so we didn't have a great deal of contingency on the HVAC control project or even the O&M building. It's not a huge contingency amount, but that percentage does, it is an outlier compared to the others. But there were good reasons for both of those.
I mean, overall, you guys are doing a great job. I just wondered why those were different.
Yeah.
And Brian, this is Angeline. Just a question there for you. I just
Okay.
picked up on your conversation with Marty. Well, not your conversation with Marty, and just want to reframe that. But I did pick up you saying that you were having some difficult discussions with contractors.
Right.
Ooh, are you open to discussing that?
Well, our contracts include liquidated damages provisions for late completion. And so when as you're approaching the end of a project, you have to do, in some cases you have that discussion about the liquidated damages and reminding them about the damages. And I can tell you, at least in one of these cases for the O&M building renovation, for the most recent payment application, we assessed liquidated damages against PwC. And so it really comes down, it's about money. And time is money.
Yes, time is money. So I still don't understand what is the difficulty here in terms of the liquidated damage. Is it just a conversation and you're trying to resolve that, or is there any issues with that are getting escalated? I mean, just trying to get to the gist of this.
Well, I'll use the O&M building renovation project as an example. We deducted money from their payment application for liquidated damages. So this is hitting them in the pocketbook. And when you start taking money away from the contractor that they've otherwise earned, the relationship becomes a little more tense.
Yes, it does. And so I'm just concerned as a board member. I hope that it doesn't impact the work that we have assigned to them.
We are, as part of our observations and inspections that we do, we're endeavoring to make sure that doesn't happen, that we're not getting shortchanged in some other way.
But there's no guarantee to that, right? So.
Well, I mean, we do the best we can with the inspections and the observations, but we do not provide full-time inspection of the contractor's work. No.
Hey, Angeline, this is Mark. Do you understand what liquidated damages are? I just want to make sure.
In this context, yeah, liquidated damages are damages that are made to the assets. Is that what we're talking about?
No. Why don't you go ahead, Brian, and explain because now I understand where you're coming from. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Our contracts include a per diem amount that we call liquidated damages. So for every day the contractor is late in delivering the work, and in this case, in the O&M building, substantial completion, we deduct that per diem amount from the contractor's payment application.
Oh, if the contractor is late.
Yeah,
that's what.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay, I was gathering it's okay. When I hear liquidated damage, I think of economics. I mean, that's just how I'm trained professionally,
okay.
and I'm looking at it from an economical point of view. So
Okay.
That's why I was looking at the assets. So,
Okay.
okay.
I did not understand your question, and thank you, Mark, for jumping in there. I appreciate that.
No, learning something new every day. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, gentlemen.
These are very difficult discussions to have with contractors.
Well, it's great to know too. I apologize if I'm just perking you on these questions, but I think it's important in our decision-making process. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I have this morning a should be a very brief update, but this relates to the new access for Trap Rock for the water treatment facility. And I think everybody's relatively familiar with this, but just a quick orientation on the map here. I think everybody, you see where Trap Rock is. Google is our neighbor building a data center, and they're located just to the west. And you know, the context for this again is that they here fairly in the last couple of years have purchased the property from Luckstone, which is moving to the east of their facility and just north of Trap Rock. And so you can see where the X is in the center of the map. That is our Gant Lane our access coming from Cochrane Mill Road to Trap Rock. And so you'll recall what we'll end up getting out of the acquisition they made is that we're going to get a new primary access that is coming directly off Sickleland Road. So where you see Sickleland Road, the access that is coming into that Google site, paralleling the Greenway, and then where you see the bright green little bar there, that is the project that Google, that is one of the first steps they were taking when they had all their approvals in place and before they really got into construction of their next data center. They were going to complete that, and then that will become the new primary access for our Trap Rock water treatment facility. So we actually had some thought that that was being planned. We thought that may have been completed here in January. But it is very close, not completed yet. We're not using it, but we expect that to be over the course of, say, the next month. So I would say within February at some point, we expect that to be fully completed, opened up, and we will begin using that. And there's some things, additional things, and at an upcoming meeting, we will follow up and confirm that is completed and opened up, and we're able to use that. So. That really is the update for the time being, and we'll follow up at a future meeting and let you know when that's done. So with that, if there are any questions about it, happy to take that. Mr. Kobles?
I thought for the new members that maybe you could be a little more detailed in the trade-offs that were done to come up with this situation.
Sure. Yep. So again, I think maybe for the new members, you remember that the access coming into Trap Rock, I don't recall if we've had a chance since you've been with the board. Maybe it's with the COVID situation, you haven't been able to be out there. But our access from going back over the last 10 years of all the planning and design and construction comes off of Cochrane Mill Road, comes down Gant Lane. It is a combination of some gravel roads, some paved. And with the acquisition that Google has made with Luckstone and going to be expanding their data center use to the east, which is toward Goose Creek and north of our treatment plant, that primary access road was basically going to be cut off. And so through that negotiation, what we were able to secure and get out of that is that we're going to have a new primary access, which comes directly off Sickleland Road through that paved road coming into Trap Rock. And the intent of that is all of that is being designed. It is a private road. It is we have a permanent access easement there. It is all designed to a VDOT standard. So the the desire at some point in the future is that may become a VDOT public road. There's some issues with the initial property owner coming off Sicklein that still needs to get taken care of. So I think that'll be sometime in the future, but we feel very good about this being an upgrade in terms of access for us. We'll also continue to have a secondary access, an emergency access through the Gant lane, which will be rerouted around the north side of their new property, and it'll link up with our the road that goes along the raw water pipeline paralleling Goose Creek. So we'll have an additional secondary access point here, coming up in the future. So if hopefully that helps. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer that.
Mr. Koblis?
Yeah, thanks, Mark and Jewel.
Yeah.
Couple things. Number one, does this change our address for the building? I mean, we can't be on Gant Lane anymore, right?
It's a good question. I don't know, and I'm not sure if that's come up for our folks at the plant, but definitely something we'll look at. So it's a good question. We'll follow up with you on that.
And then the second thing is, you said it was a private road. I assume that they can never put a gate across the road that we have to go through in order to get to our plant.
That is absolutely correct. That was one of the things in our negotiations and discussions that we were had some concern about, and there are provisions, and we worked that through Jonathan, that they are not allowed to do that. Good question.
Even in a emergency situation, say a bomb threat or whatever, they
correct.
can't ever put. Okay, good.
No, that's correct.
Hey, Mark, I just wanted to jump in just to answer that question with regards to the address. The actual address of the buildings over at Trap Rock are Glen Circle Drive, so this should not impact our physical address for the building.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, well, it looks like that may be it for questions. And again, we'll bring this up here in a future meeting and confirm when everything's fully completed and we have it in use. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mark. Next thing is the CIP committee work plan. I think that's pretty complete. I didn't have any questions. Does anybody else have?
Making my job easy today, huh?
Yeah,
I have one little quick question for you. So when is the next time we hear about Beaver Dam? Not until it's not even on the list. I can't even see it. Yeah, there it is. October 27th is the next time we hear about Beaver Dam?
That would be for action at the CIP committee. I think per the discussions that we've had that.
Oh yeah, that's right. I got, never mind.
Yeah, continue
I
through
forgot about
the
that.
water resources.
Got it, I forgot.
Okay, great. If there's no other questions, then.
No, doesn't sound like it. Thank you, sir. Next is the capital spending summary report. I didn't have any questions. Does anybody else on the committee or Mark have questions? You must have done a good job. There are no questions.
Thank you.
Was that that was the last thing on the agenda, Jewel?
Yes, sir. Other than the tentative February agenda. So now we're at the adjourned meeting.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
This is Keith, so moved.
Can I get a second?
Yes, sir. Roll call vote. Mr. Sultan,
Yes.
Mr. Bonfils, Mr. Moody,
Yes.
and Ms. Ursakar.
Yes.
Thank you. Adjourned at 9:25 a.m.